Welcome to In Her Words. We have loved Heather Graham since her Boogie Nights, Austin Powers, and Sex and the City days. We were thrilled to sit down and talk about her new projects, Chosen Family, Place of Bones, and They Will Kill You. Heather has a lot going on right now. We also talked about wellness and how she was really a trailblazer in practicing and being open about health and wellness. She's just as lovely as you imagine, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I think your podcast is so cool. I love what you guys are.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I am total fangirling right now. I am such a huge fan. I have been a fan your whole career. I mean, I am a Boogie Nights, Diggstown, Heather Graham fan from day one. I just watched the other night. I was going to sleep to Sex and the City, and your episode was on, and I'm like, I get to talk to Heather. I'm so excited.
I love Sex and the City so much. It's so funny because doing that cameo, which I thought was like, okay, I barely am in it, but it's people really remember that cameo. It's really funny.
It's such a great episode. Yeah, it's such a good episode. But no, I'm just such a huge fan, and you are everywhere right now, my love. Oh my gosh, Chosen Family and Place of Bones, and these announcements. It's so exciting.
Yes, thank you. No, it's really fun. I'm grateful to my publicist and just that my career has lasted this long. I'm very grateful that I am still working and getting to do fun stuff.
Well, it seems like these projects, I was just reading, obviously reading in some of your interviews with Chosen Family and even Place of Bones, it feels like these projects, they're personal. They have kind of a personal attachment to you, whether it's obviously Chosen Family, which we'll get to in depth in a second, but even Place of Bones, and you finding that, like, how would a mother and a daughter, how would you handle this situation? How are you a strong woman in these situations? So they all feel like they have you're really finding a personal attachment to these stories. Is that something that's different from earlier in your career or more important, or kind of how has that evolved where there's something personal in these stories to you?
Well, I think in line with your podcast, which I think is so inspiring that you guys are doing this podcast, is this telling stories from a female perspective with female, director, female writer. Place of Bones is a female director. It's actually a male writer. It's awesome. He wrote this script about, a woman. And then my movie being a movie that I wrote and that I directed. So it's fun to just tell stories where women are the protagonists. We get to be the heroes, even if we're flawed heroes. Because I feel like growing up in the business and I have to say that I'm very grateful. I've had so many amazing opportunities with really talented people. Mostly they were men,
Mm-hmm.
And mostly I acted in movies with male stars, directed by men, written by men. So it is really refreshing to feel like more female stories are being told and that I can be in a female protagonist story.
No, it's amazing, and these stories are great, and we hear that so much more now. And I loved one of the articles that you were in talked about. I think the interviewer went in kind of on pay disparity, but you started talking about what you're worth and what the story's worth, and and even box office expectations, and how it feels like that's finally evolving. We're not still holding on to these old rules of it has to be a male because that's what's going to be box office, and your point too of but that's all we're giving the public. So how do we know what people are worth?
I mean, I do think it's evolving, but I don't think it's
No.
completely changed. Like, when I was making my movie, the expectation was to get a certain budget level, but that was all dependent on us getting a famous man. So it was like, oh, you don't have a famous man? Let's reduce that budget by more than half, So, I mean, it's true. Like, you've got Barbie coming out, making a lot of money, and people Reese Witherspoon's company selling for $1 billion. It's like, there's an audience out there that wants to watch these type of stories, but still in the independent film world, when I was making my movie, it was pretty much like, get a male lead or your budget's going to be extremely small.
Tell us a little bit. We have so many people that listen to our podcast that are new to the industry and that are just starting out in their career. Or tell us about pitching that, and what did you kind of know going in with your own project, and how did you have to pivot as you were pitching and as you were getting this budget feedback?
Well, one of the reasons why, there's so many movies with male protagonists and where the man is always the lead and he always gets the best lines and the most exciting things to do is because that's how movies are made. Like every person that's in a movie gets put into like a machine and that machine spits out a number like, well, their movies have made this much and that determines whether or not they're going to make the movie. And because more male driven movies are being made, there's just many more men that get these movies made. And so on the independent movie level, it's pretty much like get a famous man. And then if you're not writing a story where the man is this protagonist who kills all these people and like wins the day by being super macho, it's not as easy to attract these kind of big male stars.
Yeah. So when you were taking Chosen Family out, did you have to adjust as you were trying to pitch? How did you
No, I mean,
prepare for that?
I definitely tried to get more money, and at a certain point when we weren't getting, this big male name that they wanted, they're like, okay, so we got Julia Stiles, which was what greenlit the movie,
Which
which
we
was so
cannot have
amazing.
enough Julia Stiles. Can I just say that? So excited. Oh my God.
I know. I know. We just did a screening last night at the Screen Actors Guild, and Julia came, and we did a Q&A. And, she's an icon. People love her. I mean, she's amazing. And she's also just a very impressive person in life. You just think this woman is like so smart and interesting and cool. But basically it was her attachment that got the movie, greenlit, which I'm so grateful to her for. So yeah, women do have power. It just was like, but we're only giving you this much money. You know what I mean? So it's like not a lot of money. So we had to make the movie not a lot of money.
The film is great. It does not look like it didn't have a lot of money. So it's, yeah, as a woman in the business and wanting, and a huge consumer of content, we are so grateful that, that there are people like you out there pushing these amazing stories, because we'd be bored stiff if there wasn't, weren't
I
all
know
these
it's
great stories.
fresh.
Yeah.
Story. Yeah, it's a new story you haven't seen before. I mean, the way the system is, it makes it harder for these stories to get made. Number one, there's the financiers. Usually they're men, right? So you have to convince them that this story is worth telling, whereas sometimes maybe they can't relate. Luckily, in my case, one of my financiers totally related. He was, a divorced dad with a son, so he kind of related to a lot of the dynamics. But so you have to get through the financing, which is mainly men. There's definitely some women out there, which is very cool. Then you have to, once you make the movie, the distribution. Luckily, we actually have like a female president of our distribution company, but a lot of the distributors are men. Then you have to go through all the reviewing, which is mostly men, and like it's like all these levels of male driven business to finally get to that female consumer that actually really wants to watch these kind of stories. But I actually, not to discredit that, some men do really like watching these stories. Yeah.
So take us to, I was, you wrote this film, you directed this film. What in your have you always written and wanted to and directed? Tell us, we all know you in front of the camera. So have you always written? What are you finding that you're loving right now in front of behind the camera? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I haven't always written. I mean, I've always loved reading books. And I think it was, as an actress, you're kind of like, okay, people hire me and please, like me and think I'm great and hire me. And usually that's to a man, right? So at a certain point, I just felt I'm sick of trying to get these men to want to hire me and see me, as whatever I want to be seen as for the specific role. And I just thought I'm going to hire myself, and just take the power into my own hands and just like write something that I cared about. I mean, my mission, whether or not I'm accomplishing it, I don't know, is to just empower women, because I feel like as a female consumer growing up watching movies that, we're told kind of a story of like, you're the supporting character, your story isn't as important as the guy. I mean, of course, there's exceptions. There's amazing movies with a female lead, but I would say, 75 to 80% of the movies you're watching have a male protagonist. So as a person growing up in the culture, I felt like, oh, well, your needs aren't as important. You have to kind of just be important to some guy, and that's what's going to make you important.
This story is personal to you. Tell us about a little bit about the team that you wanted to put together. So if you're behind the camera, you're in front of the camera, you're making all the decisions, like you said, you wrote this story for yourself. What was important to you to for the team that put together to bring this to life?
Well, it's a shout out to men because I'm a feminist, but of course there's amazing men out there. Our director of photography, Steven Fierberg, he really is extremely accomplished. He just won a cinematographer award. But so he worked on the movie, which was amazing because he usually does like really huge TV shows, and he made it look good for not, for the budget that we had. And he's such an artist, and he was such a collaborator, and I feel so grateful that I got to work with him.
Yeah, the no, it does. It looks beautiful. Um, I want to go back a little bit. Like we always like to, again, like I said, we have a lot of young people, a lot of people starting out in their careers that listen to our podcast, come to our events. Can you talk about any of the, what were the roadblocks that you encountered? Did you always know that you wanted to be an actress? Was there always a little inkling when you started acting that maybe you wanted to get behind the camera? Who kind of helped your career? Who, I don't mean like a name of a person, but what kind of people in the industry helped you along? What kind of people maybe blocked you? Like, we always like to have some advice for people to say, no, I had to make this pivot because this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So do you have any, as you were kind of starting out that you can share?
Well, my story was that I grew up, in suburbia. I didn't have anyone in my family that was in the business. My father was extremely religious, but in a very kind of, I felt, abusive way. And, so I really had, and I think that I started to think, I felt very, my family was very frustrating to me. So I felt that I had to get out, and I thought I need to become an actress. And the way that I kind of got attention in school was that I was in plays. And I think that was the way that I felt that I could, feel that I was offering something, that I was special. And so I started to, I was living outside of Los Angeles in the Valley. I started to drive in and go on auditions when I was about 16. And I started to get jobs, which was amazing. And as a woman, it was incredible. I basically started to support myself financially from the age of like 17. I was able to pretty much be independent financially, which was incredible.
That is hugely incredible. One of the articles you talked about, and I thought this was so fascinating, is, women just in general, as you said, you were very smart in school and excuse me, in AP classes and in things, but you loved acting. And so you had to be like, I'm not just smart, I'm pretty and I'm talented too. And then as we get as you get into the industry, you're like, I'm not just pretty, I'm smart and I can do this. So that is, I mean, I think that's something that, again, whether you're, in Hollywood or whatever, that women really, really struggle with. So can you talk a little bit about, kind of that journey of how do you get people to pay attention to both?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the sexism of the culture definitely restricts women. It sort of feels like, well, they want you to be attractive, but not like too sexual, because then they'll judge you negatively. But then if you're not attractive, they'll judge you negatively. It's like this very narrow window where like you can be attractive enough, but not like, I don't know, and just how we express our sexuality and how that's judged, I think is very sexist as well. Um, but yeah, I think for me, the main thing that in my life that's been important is detaching from cultural expectations of what women are supposed to be, and just like loving myself as I am and just trying to express my authentic self and sort of detach from what other people think. Because definitely, I feel that, yeah, the culture's sexist. It's sexist. It's hard to be an actress. You're getting a lot of feedback in moments that sometimes is positive, sometimes is negative. You really have to find a strong center inside yourself where you're not like swayed by, what a person can say.
Did you feel like you really had to, as you're pitching projects, and like you said, you're talking to financing, you're behind the camera now, did did you feel like you had to kind of really take a different stance to get people to see you differently?
I think that I think that when you start thinking about how do people see me, then you're kind of giving away a lot of your power to other
Mm,
people. And for me, it's more about like, being in creative in the ways that feel good to me and in saying what I want to say. And I guess, at the end of the day, it's kind of taking the opportunities that come to you, because it's not, unless I have my own financing, I can't really always, do the exact thing that I want to do. But for me, the most important goal beyond just career wise, which obviously matters, is just really like approving of myself, which I tried to say in Chosen Family, try to make that the through line, where it's kind of like it's about a character who's basically a people pleaser. She doesn't know how to set boundaries. She thinks like taking care of other people and making them feel good and like her and see her in a certain way will make her feel better about herself, but it doesn't really work. So it's kind of just like, go where the love is, go towards the people who love you, enjoy your life, feel good about yourself, do what feels good to you, and then like kind of turn over the results.
That's amazing advice, no matter where we are, right? That's such a any age, any industry, that's amazing advice. So like we said at the beginning, you're everywhere right now. You've done comedy, you've done drama. This They Will Kill You looks fascinating. It's a comedy horror. Do you have a favorite that genre wise that that you see yourself or that you enjoy more than another?
I mean, I do like all the genres, and I'm grateful to get to do different genres. I love it. I guess I do like comedy. It's funny because when I first started, I wanted to do Sophie's Choice. I wanted to do really dark dramas.
Mhm.
Now I really admire comedians so much because, you realize how difficult and painful life can be, and to find things that make you laugh, I think is really such an it's a gift. So, I mean, I love the dramedy. I love the dark comedy. I love stuff like that. I like when you take a really difficult subject matter and then kind of coat it in a little bit of humor so that it's
Mhm.
like a palatable, little pill.
Yeah, no, and we need it. You're right. And everybody, it's amazing how many people we talk to that, especially writers, comedy's harder. They're like, no, it's hard to make people laugh. It's hard to find that, to reach the masses, I guess, with because people's sense of humor are so different. But you are a rarity in someone that can do all of that. And we think back in the different things and the Austin Powers and the different, and then a Boogie Nights type, but that you can really cross over all of those genres. And just what we're looking at right now, I mean, a very serious, a Western, drama, and having a period piece, and then having something that's personal. There's all of those genres right now. It's quite amazing.
Thank you. That is so kind of you to say. I'm so honored that you would say that. Thank you.
And on the genre side, and then we also have now, again, as your career has evolved, you have seen and lived through, it was feature film or television. That was it. Now we've got all of the streamers involved. Again, in front of and behind the camera. What are you seeing that you like or don't like about all of those choices?
I mean, I think in terms of being a person just watching movies and television, it does seem like TV takes more chances. And it's kind of what independent cinema was,
Mhm.
in like the 90s. It's like they seem more willing to tell stories that aren't necessarily like tentpole movies. That's like a superhero movie and it's a sequel. I feel like a lot of the movies that come out are sequels of movies that have already been successful. And I think in TV, they take a little bit more chances. So I actually optioned this book. It's written by Leanne Moriarty, who
Mhm.
wrote Big Little Lies, and it's called The Hypnotist Love Story. And my friend Deb Fisher, who's this amazing showrunner, she did the show Ginny in Georgia, which is
Oh my gosh, we
so
love.
good. You guys should talk to her, actually. I
Oh,
should introduce you to her.
yes, please.
No, she is like a brilliant writer. She was a showrunner for the first two seasons, and she's collaborating on this with me. She's the showrunner, and I mean, I think her voice is so exciting, like a female, just super cool, voice. And
Mhm.
so we partner with MGM, this other awesome woman, Lindsay Sloan at MGM, who's done a bunch of cool stuff. So we're hoping to make that, and we are going to make that. I'll just speak positively. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's cool that there's places that content can go in
Mhm.
television when like movies sometimes I think they're afraid to take chances.
I don't think I've heard it phrased that way. That they really can take more chances, and it can, these limited series can take more chances. I love that. That's so true, and I think for us as consumers, we get the benefit of that.
Yeah, for sure.
So when I think about you as a fan, obviously, like we talked about your long career, but you were one of the first people that I can remember, public, celebrities really talking about wellness and talking about yoga and talking about, taking care of yourself. I feel like you were a really, and I don't know that you were, a front runner in doing it, but you were definitely a front runner in talking about it and being public about it. And obviously it's paid off. You look fabulous. Oh my God. But
That's
what, tell us about that part of your life and why, how that, whether it's yoga or eating healthy or taking breaks from work, that not only did you do it, but you really talked about it in a very early stage in your career, that I don't remember hearing a lot of other people talking about that, and what it's meant for you, and how it's really kind of become part of you, and what what it meant to your life, what it's meaning to your life, because I know you still do
Aw,
it.
that is so nice. Well, it's yeah, I was actually on the cover of Time magazine talking about meditation. I remember at that time the article
Yes.
it was slightly condescending. It was like, oh, this like woo woo thing, meditation. I mean, who knows? Maybe it works or not, you know? And I remember kind of being slightly sort of almost made fun of for like medit. Why do you now? It's just like if there's a meditation app, everyone's like, why wouldn't you want to like find more inner peace, you know?
Right.
So I do feel like in some ways I'm ahead of my time. So I feel like
Yes.
people don't really get the things I'm talking about. And then later, like if I talk about women being sex positive and it's like, why is she too sexual? Now it's like, yeah, a lot of women, the younger generation is like, we all, want to feel good about our sexuality and not have to, squash it down in order to seem like a good person, you know?
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, I do think wellness is important. I do yoga, and it is cool, like to just talk about meditation and see the culture kind of evolve to sort of embrace meditation.
Yeah, the meditation and the yoga. And I just remember, and I couldn't even tell you what year it was, but remember them, like there were being an article. And again, I know what's in
Yeah.
the press, but you were, taking a yoga retreat. And like you said, it was kind of woohoo at the time. And I
Yeah.
thought, was she ahead of her time fully, or was she just willing to talk about it? But do you hear positive response about that? Like that, that you shared kind of those taking breaks and taking care of your, physical, mental, and emotional health, that you're a front runner of being
Oh.
vocal about it.
I mean, I think you're right. Of course, there's obviously people that were doing it way before I was talking about it, but I do think I am, in the talking about it. I definitely was one of the people talking about it before everyone got super into yoga. And now everybody's going to yoga and lots of men are going to yoga.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. It's good to see like the culture catching up with me.
You've led us, yes, and you're leading by example. You're leading by example, because
I'm
it
joking,
is.
but
It's
yeah, that's
but that
cool.
is when I think of your career, I'm always like, and she always did this too, which I think it was a
Well,
strong enough
thanks for
message that it stayed out there. Yeah.
I mean, thanks for noticing that. I did feel at the time when I was talking about that stuff, people looked at me like, oh, well, it was sort of looked down on almost, And it's cool that now people like really think that stuff is cool.
No, definitely. Okay, I know we're almost out of time, so I have two last things. I want to hear what's next. You have the Liam, or you said you optioned the book, but I hear you say you're getting ready to go film out of the country?
Yes, I'm going to South Africa and
Okay.
I'm making this movie. It's called They Will Kill You. It's
Yeah, right.
it's kind of I mean, it's a comedy horror sort of like social commentary movie. It's a really good script. I'm really
Okay.
excited about it. I get to
Yeah,
do
we've seen the announcements.
Yes, I'm very excited, and I get to do some action stuff in it, which I'm excited about. I've always kind of wanted to do some more kind of fight scenes, and I'm going to get to do that, so I'm very excited.
Okay, that is very cool. Yeah, the announcements on that were, and that is, I'm gonna get it right, Skydance's new horror arm, Nocturna, right?
Yes, yeah, it's
Yeah,
this
that's
really cool
exciting.
company started by the guy who did the movie It and his
Uh-huh.
wife, and yeah, it's called Nocturna, and this is the first film they're doing.
First film. That's, yeah,
Yeah.
that is very cool. And then I know you don't have any free time right now because you are crazy busy with Chosen Family and now this project, but I love to hear, what you're reading or watching or listening to that, that you're really loving. And don't be shy. We get a lot of Real Housewife answers on that. But it's like, I work all day. I just want to watch Real Housewives when I get home. But what are you watching or reading that you're really loving right now?
Well, I mean, I just did read those, books. It ends with us and it starts with us, which were fun. I like female perspective, like in her work. I think it's cool. Like this woman wrote this book because her mom dealt with domestic violence, and now she's the daughter, and she's like, how do you break this chain, and how do I tell this story so women can have this forum to talk about this stuff? So yeah, I love reading female writers. And I mean, a book that I didn't read super recently, but I was telling a bunch of my friends to read it, is that book Educated. I don't know, have you ever read that?
No.
I just want to make sure I'm saying the author's name. I think it's like Tara Westover. But it's this amazing story, which I kind of related to because I grew up with, Tara Westover. I grew up with a very, really difficult, religious father that was really, I felt really painful. But anyway, she wrote about growing up in this fundamentalist Mormon kind of community, and she wasn't allowed to go to school or go to the doctor. And I just really related to that book. And it's a great book. Anyone listening, you guys should read it. This woman, it's her true life story, and how she then went to Harvard, and sort of, it's inspiring.
Okay. Tara Westover. Okay, we will say.
Oh, you would love it. You would absolutely love it, I think.
It sounds fascinating. Yeah, we love.
Another great book I really like that just popped into my head is The Vanishing Half, which I tried to option but was already optioned. But it's about these two sisters who are Black, but they can sort of pass for white, and how their lives go in these different directions when one of the sisters decides to pass for white and the other one goes into just stays in her community. And it's a really well written book. It's really good.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for being with us today. It is I am so geeking out being able to meet you and talk to you, and we love your projects and can't wait to see the rest of these. So thank you so much for taking the time.
I mean, it means so much for you to do this podcast and celebrate women and our voices. And so thank you for having me on. I feel honored to be on.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.